Let's take a quick look at how you stand and how that affects the tension you place on your hip flexors. When you completely relax your abdominal muscles, it places tremendous stress on your hip flexors. Remember, we need balance with who is supporting and holding your core. And if you completely let your abs go when you stand, then your poor hip flexors are having to pick up all the slack. So the first thing I want you to think about when you're standing and relieving stress off of those hip flexors so they can let go and relax is stacking your rib cage over your pelvis. Now, when your hip flexors are tight, this is going to be a little bit easier said than done, but I want you to work on giving it some effort. So what I want you to think about here is not falling forward. So let's take a look at what bad posture looks like and then what good posture looks like. So if I stand like this, and let's get my arms out of the way so you can see. If I stand like this and just hang forward on my hips, do you see how I'm pressed forward? I can completely let my abs go. Is this how you look sometimes when you see a picture of yourself? So right now I am hanging on my hip flexors. They are literally doing all the work for supporting me. My spine feels really compressed and my hip flexors are getting strained in the front. And this is often accompanied by glute clenching. So that low level of holding your glutes, which then really shoves that femur forward in the socket, which then causes the hip flexor that wraps around your leg to have to hold even tighter. So now it's supporting your spine and it's trying to keep your hip in the right place. Poor thing, it's doing so much work. So what I want you to think about doing is shifting backwards. So just a little simple, feel where your weight is over your feet and shift backwards. And then think about trying to straighten your knees for me, because I see a lot of women that either their knees are hyperextended back, and I can't get mine to hyperextend, I'll insert a picture, that either hang with their knees hyperextended back and their hips hanging forward, or they clench their bottom and bend their knees when they stand because they're trying to get some stability and relieve some stress off their hip flexors. So what I want you to think about doing is find that weight balance front to back where your feet, you are balanced between the balls of your feet and your arches, and you are not shifted forward onto your toes, you're not back on your heels clenching your glutes. You are balanced between the balls of your feet and your heels, and you are coming up tall. Your knees are soft but not locked back, but they're not bent while you clench your glutes, and you feel like your pelvis, your midsection is balanced over the middle of your ankles. It is not hanging forward. Okay, so this is step number 1. Balance the middle of your body over your arches, over your ankles. So take a snapshot of yourself from the side, and I want you to look for that alignment so you can figure out where you need to go to bring your body back to where it's balanced over the middle of your ankles. And you're probably going to be like, whoa, Sarah, that was so much work. Okay, but that's awesome because that's showing you that deep internal system in you that has not been working, and you've just been hanging forward on those hips. So I want you to make that shift back. The other thing I want you to think about doing is really using your abs to hold you when you stand. This means trying to become taller between your hips and your rib cage. Now, whenever I tell a patient in the clinic to come taller, the first thing they do is this. Oh, okay, I'm taller. Well, not in your back, you're not taller. You're actually just scrunched your spine a lot more in your back because you're trying to come taller only from the front. So what I want you to think about doing is seeing how much space you can create between your pelvis and your rib cage. Okay, how much space, but space in the back, space in the sides, not space in the front. Okay, now if your posture looks like this and you're scrunched here, then sure, space all the way around. But I tend to find people with really tight hip flexors tend more to hang forward, and then they tend to thrust their ribs out when they try to come taller. So I want you to think, keep the ribs connected to your pelvis. They're just stacked over. Pretend your rib cage is a bowl of water or something. And you don't want it to spill out. So if you're hunched this way, it's going to spill out the back. If you're hunched this way, it's going to spill out the front, and we want it to spill into your pelvis. Think about that alignment. We get the top aligned with the bottom. Everybody connects through the middle, through the core, and all of a sudden your abs are like, whoa, I can work again because my alignment is correct. So those poor abs, they can't work if they are not lined up. So if you've got one, the top facing this way, the bottom facing the other way, and then those abs are trying to work, but nobody's lined up to help them work, then they're just fighting an uphill battle. Okay, so think rib cage stacked over your pelvis. Now what this is gonna feel like, it's gonna feel a little strange at first. It really is. You're gonna feel like you're almost coming forward just a little bit, like you're almost kind of falling forward, and your hips are coming back a little. So it's going to feel strange, and that is okay, and that's just because you're not used to it yet, but you'll get used to it. Okay, so instead you've probably been standing like this, ribs up or ribs hunched, and hips pressed forward. So when we bring your hips back and we bring your ribs down, it's going to feel like you're a little bit forward, but if you look at my alignment from way back here, I'm lined up with the middle of my ankles. If I'm here, I can have really tall posture. I am behind my ankles. Okay, so it's more of a relaxed forward posture. One more way I like to really get this to sink in with people is to think about your pubic bone. Grab your hair. Think about your pubic bone connecting through the back of your hair. So you're not pulling your hair backwards, you're pulling your hair up and forward a little bit. So hair is being pulled that way. So think about your line of trajectory. So you're tucking your chin just a little bit, like dropping it down, and you're pulling your hair up, line of trajectory, and that is connecting to your pubic bone. So from here, we're connecting that inner core through the middle, through your pubic bone, through those lower traps. You should feel some connection here in your posture muscles, and then up through the crown of your head, and this is going to align your whole core. So think about that. Think about that connection with pubic bone, crown of head, tall, somebody's pulling on your head, space between your ribs and your pelvis, and it should feel a little weird at first, but then I want you to think about holding that alignment, and I want you to think about walking around and letting your arms swing. So when your right leg comes in front, your left side of your arm goes. Okay, so you're getting that natural arm swing with your gait. You're a little bit forward, you're not letting your ribs flare, and you're stacking your ribs over your pelvis. So work on trying to implement that. It's going to be hard. I want you to watch this video 5 or 6 times, and I want you to take a ton of selfies, and I want you to video yourself, and I want you to hold it up next to mine, and I want you to look at that. Now everybody's body looks a little different. Everybody has a little bit more of a natural arch, or a little less of a natural arch, or a little longer torso or shorter torso, or whatever. So nobody is going to look exactly the same, and there's no such thing as absolutely perfect posture. But what we want to work on is aligning our parts so they can be the most effective strength available possible to use. Okay, so let's work on that, and then let's talk next about hip flexor release in standing.